What does a farmer in Iowa have in common with an Uber driver in New York City? Their struggle, much like the struggle facing millions of Americans, isn't left versus right. It's about who has power and who doesn't. A progressive economic populism is how we rebalance the economy to work for the many, not the few. To explain what economic populism really means, a great champion of the working class, former FTC Commissioner Alvaro Bedoya.
My time at the Federal Trade Commission, before Donald Trump fired me for doing my job, totally changed the way I see our political divide. It turned me into a populist. Here's what I mean by that. I used to think that the defining fight for our country was between Democrats and Republicans, between the left and the right. Now I am much more worried about the money at the top crushing everyone underneath. It sounds grim because it is, but I also think that this way of looking at the world can unite our country across cultural and even political lines in a way that feels almost impossible today. The largest force in American politics right now is anti-establishment fury at a rigged system. I saw this every day when I was at the FTC. I saw it when I talked to farmers in Iowa and Uber drivers in New York City and pharmacists and grocers in Knoxville and Salt Lake City and Pine Ridge, South Dakota, and everywhere in between. Nearly every person I talked to had one problem, and it wasn't DEI or immigration or the trans agenda. No, the people I talked to couldn't stop talking about how corporate power was bleeding them dry. In Iowa, I heard from fourth and fifth generation family farmers who told me about the big ag corporations who'd monopolized the entire food supply chain, from inputs to outputs to every middleman in between. Even the farm equipment they owned outright was locked by John Deere so that only John Deere could fix it and profit from those expensive repairs.
It's the first day of harvest, and we go to turn the combine on to do it, and it doesn't work. It goes into limp mode, it doesn't let you do anything, it shows you an error code. Had an owner's manual, and I looked it up and I was able to be like, okay, it's probably this, but I can't just like order up on my phone. I don't know what piece of equipment it is. I don't know exactly that type of stuff. So I have to call the technician to come out, and we have to wait all day while the weather, the wind's howling, it's hot, the soybeans are drying. Technician comes out, he's able to, use his stuff to tell us, hey, this is the error code you're seeing, this is what we need, this is the part we get. He comes down the next day, we get charged again for him coming back down. We lost countless hours of trying to be out in the field, just waiting on them to do that. Instead of like having a local dealer come out, we could have got moving quicker on that, but we were forced to kind of just wait for John Deere to come, also pay them the higher fee of their repair fees, and for the technician to come and to pay for that delivery part to come quicker.
Meanwhile, in New York City, I met with a group of Uber and Lyft drivers, every one of whom was an immigrant. They were getting lured in by promises of lucrative earnings and near total control of their schedules. Many had spent tens of thousands of dollars on new cars to get the best fares, but they were getting nickel and dimed by the ride-sharing apps. They were getting hit with new fees and restrictions, and they were getting locked out of those apps at random times of day, meaning that it would take 8 or 9 hours to earn what they used to make in just 3 or 4. They were going into credit card debt. They couldn't make rent. And when they weren't locked out, they drive up to 13 hours straight with no bathroom breaks, no food, nothing. In a roundtable I did with them, a man walked up to the table and told me his wife had died that morning. But he showed up anyway because he was getting locked out of the apps, he was going bankrupt, and no one was listening to him.
Pandemic, I want. Snow, I want. Why I cannot live like a decent people? The car cost me $62,000, plus the insurance, plus my wife, my kids, food, rent. You see, I took my car for no reason. This is not right.
Zooming out, if you focus on the conflict between the left and the right, if the most important thing is what you are, your party, your state, your race, your ethnicity, the people I met during my time at the FTC couldn't be more different. On the one hand, you had farmers who were 4 or 5 generations into building a life in ruby red rural America. On the other, you had immigrant workers in the biggest blue city on the East Coast. What could they possibly have in common? Everything. If you look at what they need, everyone I met was part of one huge group. People working themselves to the bone who are getting screwed by billionaires and corporations, regardless of their politics or where they lived or whether they were citizens or immigrants. Regardless even of whether they were workers or the owners of independent family farms and small businesses. And it may not seem that way at first, but I think that the Iowa farmer who can't run his own combine because it was locked by John Deere has a hell of a lot in common with the immigrant dad in New York City who can't drive the morning commute because he's locked out by Uber and Lyft. Because what they need is the same. They need a government that gives them a level playing field against the powerful and the wealthy. They need regulators and courts that protect them against abuse and exploitation. They need basic dignity and control in their material lives. That is what an economic populist movement can deliver for our country. Donald Trump wants you to think that the least powerful people in this country are the most responsible for your problems. Not Wall Street, not the billionaires at his back at the inauguration, no. He wants you to blame your neighbor. Don't love your neighbor, hate him, hurt him, deport him. But let me tell you this, you can't deport your way out of a rigged economy. You deport the construction worker or the rideshare driver down the street, those jobs aren't gonna suddenly start offering overtime and healthcare and benefits. Your landlord isn't gonna stop nickel and diming you on rent. Your life is not gonna get any better. Who will get rich? The billionaire CEOs who showered Donald Trump in money and are now getting showered by billion-dollar government contracts in return. Don't take the bait. Let's focus on the money and the power at the top. Let's focus on what people need. That is what gives me hope right now. That is what feels like the future.